And good morning. Welcome to Community Voice. I am your host, Josh Engel. Today I am joined by Scott Powers, the VP of Marketing, and Todd Wiggins, the CEO of Sports Turf Company. We're here to chat a little bit about what Sports Turf does and what they do for the community, as well as a big announcement that we will be unveiling here on this broadcast. Good morning, gentlemen. How are y'all?
Good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you, Josh.
Well, why don't we start off first by just sort of enlightening listeners to what Sports Turf Company does here, wherever you do it.
Georgia's our home, and West Georgia is our home, and so we're really proud of all the work that we've done over the years, here for just the local community.
So you install both synthetic and real grass in these fields.
Correct. And on the natural grass thing is a little bit more complicated than the synthetic turf. We've built some really high-end natural grass athletic fields. Auburn University, University of Alabama are some examples of places that we've done work. Ole Miss several years ago.
Emory University.
But several years ago, we went to Ole Miss, pulled their synthetic field out, built a natural grass field back in its place. And we've done high-end synthetic fields as well. We're doing one for the University of South Alabama coming up first of the year.
Excellent. Well, and if this community knows anything, it's the importance of a strong field for our players and players at all their favorite schools. We were just talking about the big game coming up this weekend a little bit before the show. That's very important, and these teams want to make sure that they have the best possible field to play on. So I feel it sort of ties in perfectly, especially with this time of year. Now, tell me, how long have you guys been in this business?
Long time. We were founded in December of 1991. I think it's important to look back on and understand sort of from where we came as a company. Aaron McWhorter and his family have been in Heard and in Carroll County for their whole lives. And, Aaron realized that there was a need coming out of, he also owns a sod operation, North Georgia Turf, NG Turf, realized there was a really strong need for a company that could really just take expertise to the next level in athletic field construction. And so from that, Sports Turf Company was born.
Yeah, many of the techniques and even the specifications that are used today were developed in those early years from Aaron's involvement with this type of construction. A lot of the technology that has been adapted to sports field construction to raise the bar as far as the overall quality of the athletic fields.
We have this conversation about natural grass and artificial turf. And the trend for certain in Georgia is for high school athletics to want to turn their stadium fields into artificial turf. And there's definitely a use cause for that as we've added soccer and lacrosse and other types of programming to those fields. But at our core, it was all about natural grass. And when we started, when you talked about turf, you were talking about the real stuff that needed to be watered, needed to be fertilized, needed to be cared for.
Yeah, and I mean, what we do see a trend towards synthetic fields. We've done a lot of really high-end grass fields for local athletics programs as well. We went to Westland this summer and pulled out their grass field and actually built a high-performing sand root zone field with an underdrain system. So, it raise the overall quality of that specific facility.
Definitely educating me to the complexities of these projects, right? Are there any specific benefits either for natural grass? I keep wanting to say natural grass, or the synthetic grass?
Yeah, there's no question. There's benefits for both. The way that we view, and this is unique to us, we're not a a turf grass grower ourselves. We don't manufacture artificial turf, so we're sort of neutral when it comes to that conversation. And we look at everything through the lens that the very best playing surface you can have is a really well-maintained natural grass field. And then everything else that we look at, whether it's artificial or not, really needs to compare to that standard.
And really, that's been our belief through the years. What we're seeing now is a focus on what's known as the one turf concept that basically follows along with that same idea, that there's not a separate standard for synthetic or natural grass, but really there should be one standard, a high-quality athletic field. And that's what we really want for our clients. And what we've always taken the approach that it's not a one-size-fits-all mentality. I pick at some of our synthetic turf salesmen all the time that they're kind of like a dentist that only knows how to pull teeth. They've never met a field that didn't need to be synthetic turf. There are a lot of scenarios and situations where it does. They're landlocked. The facility has such a high use that's a necessity. But we've been able to sit down with clients and work through these different scenarios and really help them understand their needs from the perspective of their use, their ability to maintain. There's lots of factors that go into making that decision. And at the end of the day, we want them to spend their money, the taxpayers' money, the most efficient way as possible.
Sure, and you guys sort of provide them a plan how to best take care of the field if it is natural grass from that point on.
Both, really. I mean, at the end of the day, even though it's synthetic turf, it's not a no-maintenance product. So at the end of the day, there will be maintenance. There is life beyond the initial installation. And our real goal, more than anything, is to make sure they have all the tools necessary. We're one call away to make sure that they, if they have a question, what I always say, there's no stupid question. We have an understanding of it because we work with it every day. You may not. So, how do you get gum out of a synthetic turf system? Those kinds of questions, they come up. You need those answers. And so we try to be a resource, not only in the beginning and during construction, but even through the life of the facility.
Josh, it's important, going back to your original question, to remember that when we're playing on these natural grass fields, that essentially the Bermuda grass is dormant for most of the football season, or at least the last half of it, through the winter, through PE and anybody else that's getting on that field and practicing, and then through early spring, well into soccer season. And so as in its dormancy, that grass doesn't have an opportunity to regenerate itself and recuperate from that wear. So that's where, when you look at City of Carrollton and Carroll County and their move to start to convert their fields, their stadium fields, to artificial turf, that's a use issue. And that's where you really need to give some consideration to what can we do to maintain these fields, have them look and play well through the entire winter season with the rigors of all of the different sports and band that are using these facilities.
I see. Now, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, I was going to say band's the one that everybody kind of forgets. There's lots of facilities that have forced the band into the parking lot primarily because they're trying to salvage and save their fields. So having that synthetic turf system, in a lot of ways is provided them an opportunity to have use of the facility as well.
Well, I've definitely left Home Depot on like a Saturday and left past Central, and there's just like 300 cars, and I'm like, they are having a major band competition.
Right.
Probably a few thousand
Absolutely.
kids going to be stomping on that field. So I'm starting to kind of get the picture here. So if someone approaches you, let's say Ole Miss or Auburn or someone, and they want you to install a new field, what's that process like? How long does that take?
It really depends on the complexity of the project. I'll use Ole Miss as an example. That was a rather large undertaking. It took a lot of planning, not only on the school's part but on ours as well. Because not only did we renovate the stadium field, we also renovated their practice complex at the same time. So from Ole Miss's perspective, they had to essentially give up their facility, with the exception of they have an indoor facility. They're unique in that way, but they had that indoor facility that they could fall back to. And so what we had to do was go in and do all of that other renovation and stage it in a process where we were able to get the field online in time so that we didn't miss any games. That's a big deal on that level. Ultimately, we began that project in January, and we were done sometime in July. So you're talking about overall a 6-month process. and it took a large number of employees to be able to accomplish that task. Other projects, if it's a simple high school field renovation, is a shorter time period than that. 8 to 10 weeks is a pretty acceptable time frame for a field renovation, depending on the overall complexities.
And then on the front end of that process, you have all of the graphic approvals. These fields are getting more and more rich in terms of their graphics packages. If you go back and you were to look at, for example, a Google Earth Pro image, looking at back in history at some of the older original turf fields, they were mostly green. They may have had a colored end zone. Probably didn't. They had letters in their end zone. That's about it. And now we look at colored end zones and shadowed letters and numbers and borders around the fields and logos on the 25-yard lines and alternating panels within the fields in terms of two different tones of green. And so there's a process on the front end. We usually like to allow about 30 days to go through that whole graphics approval process to make sure the owner is so excited about what's to come, and the manufacturer knows exactly what they're going to be going to the plant with.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think the thing that some people understand, some people don't. When you walk out there and you see that field on game day, all of those graphics that are there ultimately are cut into the field. So it's different colored fibers that make that the numbers, the hash marks, the arrows, all of those things is have to be manufactured and cut into that field. It's a very elaborate process to get that done, but it's there for the life of the field. That's the idea behind it.
Excellent. Well, we're going to come back here in just a short second and talk about a pretty big announcement that we have that we're going to be unveiling on this broadcast, as well as the local and regional charity work that Sports Turf does in our community, right after a word from our sponsors.
A well-rounded education includes much more than just academics. At Oak Mountain Academy, we encourage our students to find their niche in any of our 42 co-curricular opportunities. Over the past 5 years, we have brought home 5 state and 20 regional athletic titles. Our one-act play and literary teams continuously compete at the region and state level, and our academic teams bring home first place more than not. We are warriors creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org. or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
And we're back to Community Voice. I am your host, Josh Engel, joined this morning. I'm joined by Scott Powers, the VP of Marketing, and Todd Wiggins, the CEO of Sports Turf Company. We've been talking about the, honestly, shocking complexities of installing these fields. I had a feeling that there was a lot more to it than just rolling out some sod or something, but a lot goes into this, both the natural grass as well as the synthetic stuff. Each have their own benefits. And they've been at this for over 30 years, so they've definitely enlightened me, and I'm sure they've enlightened you as well about the importance of these turfs for the teams and their very specific conditions. Now, before the show, at the beginning of the show, I mentioned that you guys have a pretty big announcement, so why don't we just go right to that?
Todd?
Well, I mean, it's probably not news to those people who are have kids in Carrollton City Schools, but Carrollton just opened a brand new facility that we had a hand in, and that was their indoor practice facility. There's a multitude of things that facility encompasses. I say the small part. It's a rather large part of the facility, but the part that we did was the indoor field. And utilizing a root zone system from AstroTurf, with an idea on safety and performance, because at the end of the day, that facility is getting a lot of use. I'm sure today they will find themselves in that facility. And so what it really does for the school more than anything else is it's an indoor classroom. So there's lots and lots of things that they can utilize that facility for. And it's really exciting. It's in our backyard. We really like to support our local teams, and it was really cool for us to have a hand in that project.
And Todd, you mentioned root zone. That's a term that may be familiar to people who deal a lot with grass, but may not have any idea how that relates to artificial turf. So the root zone is essentially a thatch layer. It's a layer of curly fibers that are embedded at the root of the fibers that stick up straight that you actually see. So once the field's installed, you don't see the root zone. You have to just trust us that it's there. But essentially the root zone plays a really important role, especially in an indoor facility like Carrollton's. And that is, one of the biggest challenges with artificial turf is the migration. And any parent that has a child that's played on an artificial turf field with a more traditional technology is familiar with the rubber spray and bringing those little rubber pellets home. I was talking with another parent who's had a child that graduated from high school and has been off in college for 2 years, and she said she still, when she cleans her laundry room, finds little rubber black beads in her laundry room floor that somehow are there from 2 years ago when her son was home. But this migration is a big challenge in turf, and so AstroTurf largely solved that problem by incorporating these little curly fibers that embed themselves around the rubber beads. And so with an indoor facility, it's much less humidity. If you were to go down and watch an Atlanta United game at Mercedes-Benz, you're going to see them with water cannons soaking that field down before the game. We don't want to have to do that for Carrollton. And so we put this root zone layer in. It keeps that rubber from moving around quite so much. And it protects footing. It makes it a better playing field overall, reduces the maintenance of that field.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean that's probably the biggest thing for our high schools and our school systems that we work with is they're making a huge investment in this facility, and we don't want to increase their maintenance cost. At the end of the day, that's probably the biggest challenge that we have to work through. But the facility is going to be utilized by a lot of people. It'll be utilized for soccer, lacrosse, football. There's the indoor facility has a new weight room, and it wasn't our part of the project, but there's a weight room. There's facilities for cheerleading. There's facilities for wrestling. So overall, it was a huge investment on the part of Carrollton City Schools to do that, and we're really happy to be a part of that.
And it means a lot to me that safety is such a big priority. And I know that that's probably across the board for any turf that you guys install. But, like we said, I mean, it's during the break, I mean, it's a big topic right now. Parents are wanting to make sure that every dimension of the game is as safe as possible to prevent injury, to prevent brain damage. It's a big deal,
It is, and it's one that we've seen a lot in this industry, changes even in the last few years, a really big push to put in facilities that will meet the highest level of standards as far as those concerns. In any athletic field we put in, we want to have high quality. We want to have durability. We want to have performance. We want to have safety. Safety first and foremost. And I think that's the difference that we have in this is we're not a manufacturer, we're not a grower of sod per se, but what we're trying to do is put all of these pieces and parts together and create something that's going to last a long time.
Yeah, at Sports Turf Company, we took some time a couple of years ago to sit down and really define, after the first 30 years of our business, who are we and what do we want to be for the next 30 years of our business? And it really boiled down to we want to educate and encourage owners to install the safest, longest lasting, and highest performing athletic facilities that we can. And so we take that consulting role very importantly. And so as such, for example, annually we'll get up and visit the University of Tennessee's Center for Athletic Field Safety. And Dr. John Sorokin at University of Tennessee has 70 test plots. Every other plot is a perfectly maintained Bermuda grass field, and that's the standard that you're measuring everything else by. And then in between each of those plots are every imaginable type of grass and artificial turf system under the sun, where they're testing footing and they're testing durability and they're testing drainage and they're testing force reduction to prevent concussions and a whole slew of different factors.
And going to test athletes as well on these different surfaces. It's a pretty unique idea. There's a lot of thought that's really going into what's being built today. It's more than just the breeding of synthetic or natural grass that has occurred over the last 20 years. There's more thought and process going into the overall construction too.
And in our quest to evaluate and find new technologies in athletic field safety, we were introduced to a company called Brock USA, and they are really at the forefront of their peers in research about how to, going back to what we said earlier in the segment, how to make artificial turf fields act just like a well-maintained natural grass field. And so there's some new technologies that, Todd, you can talk about with Brock.
Yeah, so Brock's been around for a while, manufacturing pads that essentially go into the synthetic turf systems. And there's some newer infills that we've actually installed some here in the state. And what you will see moving forward is this going to become, especially on fields that are going on outside where heat is such an issue, that's a real benefit of some of these newer infills. Great footing and that sort of thing, but at the same time helping to reduce heat on the synthetic fields, because that's a big challenge for us.
Yeah, there are essentially three issues with artificial turf. There's the temperature issue, there's reducing the likelihood of concussions, so the head impact issue, and then footing. So forever we've had anecdotal stories about ACL injuries and artificial turf, and we know now that is more likely to occur in older style turf systems that have less fiber, longer fiber, where there's full of rubber, and so the athlete's cleats sink deeper into that system, and when the athlete pivots, their foot doesn't. And that's what leads to lower ankle and knee injuries. And so with turf systems that, with the root zone system we talked about from AstroTurf, or with the pad system from Brock and the Brock infill on top, it allows the cleat to act more naturally like a natural grass field when the athlete pivots, and it has exceptional force reduction to prevent concussions.
Definitely a peace of mind for all the parents that are listening that know that their student who's a football player or a lacrosse player or a tuba player, whoever they are, they're going to be safe on this new turf. We will be back to talk a little bit more about Sports Turf Company's local and regional charity work right after a word from our sponsors.
At Tanner, we're advancing health throughout West Georgia and East Alabama because we know that exceptional care isn't based on how many patients we serve, but how well we serve them. That's why we're focused on quality, delivering the best possible care for our patients. It's why we're expanding our clinical services and building new facilities to serve our growing community. And it's why we're looking beyond our hospitals and medical practices to develop sustainable wellness and preventive health programs in our region. What makes a hospital great has changed. It's not how many beds we have. It's how well we care for the neighbors who need them. Delivering the right care to every patient, every time, is how Tanner is advancing health with medicine beyond measure. Learn more at tanner.org or find a physician on our medical staff by calling 770-214-CARE.
At Oak Mountain Academy, our daily schedule includes convocation, prayer, and the Pledge of Allegiance. By doing so, we build a family-like community where all students grow and flourish and personal faith is encouraged. Through community service and a historical approach to biblical study, our students are taught the value of the warrior way, honesty, respect, and responsibility. Oak Mountain Academy, we are a family creating legacies. To learn more, visit oakmountain.us.
And we're back to Community Voice. I'm your host, Josh Engel, joined today with Todd Wiggins, CEO and Scott Powers, the VP of Marketing for Sports Turf Company. They've just put a killer new turf at the indoor training facility here at Carrollton High School. We've been chatting about that. Have a couple of quick questions that came up on Facebook Live. Two questions. What's the latest on the cancer risks that some attribute to synthetic turfs? And how do you get them out of synthetic turfs? And how do you get gum out of synthetic turf?
So the cancer risk thing was based around the crumb rubber that's been utilized in synthetic fields, and ultimately, there's two ways you can take the crumb rubber out of the synthetic system, but most of the ones that we install, they do utilize crumb rubber. At the end of the day, there's 70 some odd studies or more that are out right now that ultimately has debunked that as a myth primarily. There was a story done, I think, by NBC on 2 players, and there's not been anything else associated with that. I think even the U.S. government has looked into it, and even they came back with the same opinion that there was anything attributable there.
Yeah, the EPA, I think, generally said we're not going to unequivocally say that these fields don't have carcinogens, because we know that the rubber tires that are ground up do have carcinogens, but those chemicals are not free. So in other words, if you look at the millions and millions of square feet of artificial turf fields with rubber in them around the country, there was one issue at one site across the country, and it was not attributed to the rubber. Otherwise, we'd be seeing these kinds of issues elsewhere.
Yeah, and on the gum issue, oddly enough, if you've ever utilized a can of compressed air to which is basically compressed nitrogen to clean off your keyboard,
sure,
it'll freeze the gum and you can pick it right out. So,
and moms, if you have kids that get gum in your carpet, Todd Wiggins of Sports Turf apparently has the secret recipe to fix that. So.
Compressed air, there it is.
Air, there you go.
We only have a few minutes left here, and I really wanted to get into to whatever else that you wanted to chat about here, but also about the local regional charity work that you guys do for the community.
Yeah, so I think it's important. Aaron McWhorter, who founded Sports Turf Company, he's humble. If he were here, he would probably not be real comfortable bragging about the different things that he does in the community. But he and his wife Linda are incredibly involved, and we as employees at Sports Turf are really proud of that. Their family bought a language learning lab for Whitesburg Elementary School a couple of years ago. They're involved in the Georgia Fine Arts Committee, the Georgia Commission on Women, the CASA here in Carroll County, the Carroll County Court-Appointed Special Advocates Board, the Tanner Medical Foundation, West Georgia Technical College Foundation, and the list goes on. So I think that's one of the great stories is, we are a West Georgia and a Carroll County company at our core. And, the money that we earn and make across the Southeast doing what we do in athletics really does come back home. And so it's just such a pleasure to be a part of this community.
Sure, funnels back into the West Georgia area.
It really does.
It does.
And you guys do a fair amount of work in Alabama, right?
We do. Yes, we do. Alabama and Georgia are our 2 biggest areas of work. We do a lot of work over in Birmingham and even as far down as Mobile. So it's Alabama is a big target for us. It's pretty accessible from where we're coming from. So at the end of the day, it's a big client.
Excellent. And these particular groups that Aaron was so focused on wanting to assist, were there any personal attachments that brought him to these particular groups and these foundations, or is it just sort of there was a need, let's step in and help? I
think at the end of the day, it's more about giving back to his community. His community has done a lot for him. I think he would say that. And ultimately, it's just trying to support those organizations and those people that are close by. It's not just that. I mean, it's the schools as well. Aaron's done a lot in this community through the years.
Excellent. Well, we have 1 minute left, so please plug any websites where people can find out more information, because I'm telling you, people are going to want to know more about the details of these fields and how it's going to affect their students. Where can they get this information?
Absolutely. Thanks, Josh. If you log into www.sportsturf.net and go to our blog, that's a great place for quick information about new projects, new technologies, new things happening in the industry. We're on social media at Facebook and Twitter at hashtag STC Field Builder. So check us out. And if we can answer questions, anyone who's a decision maker related to athletic facilities or parents, let us know.
Excellent. Well, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me today, and thank you for listening. Tune in next time to Community Voice.